So I know that we're not in Halloween anymore, we're not in that spooky season, but Nosferatu just came out and I've been seeing a lot of people talk about it. They've been saying, oh, maybe Nosferatu isn't a Nosferatu, maybe he's a maybe-sferatu, maybe he's a yes-feratu. They've been talking about how romantic the movie is and all sorts of crap that I just keep hearing. Because after watching the movie myself on opening day, I've just been sitting to myself and I've just been thinking, what the hell is wrong with you? This is a guy that's got open wounds all through the back of his head and on his back. He's got stuff coming out of it that shouldn't come out of anyone. He's got open boils, all sorts of crap, and not to mention he's got that big ass mustache in the front of his head. And you're telling me that this is the person that you're willing to be down bad for? That's crazy. I gotta be honest about that. And I don't usually do this, but I'm gonna do this right now. I'm gonna kink shame you. That is absolutely terrifying. You gotta get yourself checked out. Because when we're looking at the wide selection of vampires from all times, you had your pick from any of them. You got the 1990s Bram Stoker's Dracula. You got Gary Oldman right there in that one. That's an iconic vampire right there. If you want something from animation, you've got Castlevania's Dracula. Probably the most romantic iteration of Dracula and my favorite version of him, period. That's a man that's willing to kill for his wife. Or hell, I'm just gonna throw it out there. You've got the original version of Nosferatu right here. The guy that looks like he was a little bit cleaned up. The only thing that's bad about him is that he just can't get any sun. That's why he looks so pale. But really, any one of those would be a much better option than this monstrosity over here that's got that voice that sounds like death. But if you really want to know what the jackpot is, what the gold at the end of the rainbow actually can be, well, I've got just the series for you, because that is AMC's Interview with the Vampire. Oh Lord, every time I bring up that name, it makes me sad a little bit, because everyone thinks I'm talking about the movie with Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. And that's just sad, a little bit sad. That movie, in my opinion, doesn't fit the standard. Tom Cruise's Lestat, I don't see Lestat. I only see Tom Cruise in a wig, and he's just being a little bit whiny. Brad Pitt, he doesn't even look like he wants to be there half the time. The only character pulling their weight in that movie is Kristen Dunst, and she was a kid. Not to mention how problematic I think a lot of the things in that movie are, but then again, it is accurate to the original book. But nonetheless, people think about that movie and the spin-off movies that came off whenever they hear that name. They don't think about the TV show. And that's either because they're oblivious to its existence, or they're willingly putting it off and they don't even want to mention it, which would be the sadder of the two. I say that because this is a series that's very diverse. The cast is very diverse. The sexualities that are depicted are incredibly diverse. This is a series that's very different than everything else that's being aired right now. And I just need more people to watch it, and I need AMC to promote it more, because it looks like whatever they're doing, it's not enough. The way that I found out about this series was because I kept seeing TikToks of scenes like these.
Well, I like to do it. I enjoy it.
Well, I don't. You don't have to humiliate him. Well, I don't say that you have to enjoy it!
And of course, you probably already have gotten those too. But that's why I started watching it. Not because everything was pushing me towards that direction. It was because of fans loving the series so much. And with great reason, because I think these are some of the best performances I've seen in television history, period. And that's pretty powerful, because in this year, we also got Colin Farrell's Penguin. One of the best performances I've seen in a very long time. And I love the Penguin, don't get me wrong, I love that series. But it doesn't hold a candle to Jacob Anderson's Louis or Sam Reed's Lestat, because those two are in an astronomically different level. To start off, our protagonist is Jacob Anderson. You might know him from other things like Game of Thrones, as the singer Riley Ritchie, or maybe that occasional episode that he's in Doctor Who. But I will forever now know him as Louis de Pointdulac. He kills it in this role. He is not only the narrator, but he's also the central figure in every one of these characters' lives. He delivers every time with a genuine performance. You want to pick his brain. You want to know what's going on in both of these seasons. You want to know why he's like this. He's such an interesting character to see, because there are so many different sides to him that maybe you might not expect. And then on the other side, we've got his other half, Lestat de Lioncourt, played by Sam Reed. And I gotta say, I'm surprised I've never seen this guy before. It looks like Australia's been trying to keep this man all to themselves. Sam Reed's performance in this is something that I would call just once in a lifetime. Absolutely generational. It looks like the role of Lestat was actually made just for him. In the way that he talks, in the way that he walks, every little thing is just so well done, and you feel every single word that he says. You want to believe everything that he says. And when he's together with Louis, that's a whole different level of entertainment right there. You will become absolutely absorbed by their performances when those two are on screen together. And there's no better example of this than the pilot episode. An episode of TV that I can rewatch endlessly. It is that good. The feelings that this springs up in me are way too immense. They're incredible. In my head, I can vividly picture the musical moments of when these scenes are happening. It's got some of the most iconic lines, and I just cannot stop thinking about it. This episode alone has contributed the most to my fixation on this entire series. If you just gave me this episode in a contained environment without knowing that the other ones were there, I would still be satisfied, I think. It's that well written and well done. The confession in the church is so well done. You see the terror in Louis' eyes because Lestat just murdered like 2 people in front of him. But guess what? You feel this tenderness, you feel this genuine love towards Louis from Lestat that you just can't help but feel that these 2 people are just meant for each other. But okay, let me step away from that episode. I can just talk about that one all day. It's so perfect. This version of Interview with the Vampire is very different than the original version because the original is much like that original movie that came out. But there's some things that I think definitely didn't age as well as maybe we'd expect. I mean, come on, you've got Louis in the original living on a plantation with what I can only assume are slaves. That's not really the kind of guy that you want to root for or really care about. The series does a much better thing where it jumps forward in the timeline. Now, it doesn't modernize everything and ruin the story. No, it just makes it into a time and place that's a little bit more interesting because you got early 20th century New Orleans over here. A place riddled with crimes, sex, and now vampires. What could be better than that? And the series doesn't just take creative liberties in where it takes place, it also takes creative liberties in all of the source material. And what I mean by that is, even though I haven't read the original story, I know I'm kind of bad on that, and by that I mean reading. From what I understand, it's been able to kind of source pieces from all these other books and place them into here so that the foreshadowing is seen from early on and we know that things are expected to come.
I have the blood of a Kasha in me. He doesn't know who that is.
Something that I've been able to take note of is how in present time, we've got Daniel Malloy, played amazingly well by Eric Bogosian, and he's giving his interview in present day 2023 or so. The way that his story is implemented is really interesting because in the original story, Daniel Malloy is just a young guy giving an interview in San Francisco, not this older gentleman that we see over here. And at the very end, he gets attacked and he escapes. Okay, well, what this series does is that it gives us that story, the initial one that we saw over there with a young Daniel Malloy, we see that be implemented in the story in that same exact way, but it also means that we've jumped up an extra like 40 years or so to present day Daniel, who's giving a second interview. So it says that those things that happened in that first one, that story that he told there, that can still be canon in its own right, but that this is a different interpretation of that same interview, if you want to take it in that kind of way. Both acknowledging the source material, but also building on it greatly. And they use this to great effect because, wow, the reveals that come out of this are just insane. This is a series that if you think you know what to expect, you are dead wrong. It's able to pull the rug under you at every single turn, and you're gonna praise it for it. It is fantastic in terms of how it does all of its storytelling. We see just how toxic Louis and Lestat can be with one another. And since you're seeing the story told through Louis' perspective, Lestat always looks like the villain. There's always a clear-cut point where he is the victim in every single one of his stories. And in a lot of situations, yeah, he is the victim. There's a lot of things where Lestat can't really apologize for. It's a very toxic relationship that they're going through. I mean, at one point, they even do one of the worst things that couples can ever do, and they have a kid to try and save the marriage. By the way, both versions of Claudia, the one played by Bailey Bass and the other one played by Delaney Haley's, they're both fantastic. And the way that they're switched out in the story, it fits because it feels like you're watching a play and these characters just had to swap. They handled that situation really well, but you see from Claudia's perspective at times how destructive their relationship was. She is the third person in this trio that starts to pull on one side more than the other. You feel why Louis is so attached to her and why Lestat just starts to feel this jealousy and regret to having her because he wants Louis all to himself. It's phenomenal how you just keep watching this trio unfold. unfold. But it leads me to the point that I really want to bring up, which is where I say that the way that the series plays with perspective is one of the best that I've ever seen. I haven't really seen too many series play with it in the same way that this series has. What I mean by that is that this is an interview in the most real way possible. In an interview, you get the point of view of one person, the person that you are interviewing, and they're going to tell you a recreation, they're going to tell you an example of what went down from their perspective. So that might not be the true story or the full story, for a matter of fact. Things said and done might be completely different depending on who you're talking to. And that is so real when we're looking at this story. There are a lot of great lines in this story, but one of the most simple and yet most powerful lines has to be, "Was it raining, Louis?" Because that line alone just completely transforms your thought on this entire story. You realize that you're actually watching an unreliable narrator that's just trying to remember what went down. So in the story, sometimes you might catch yourself going, did that really happen? Was it really raining? Something that I have actually thought in one or two occasions in real life. And then you get to see more voices chime into the story as it progresses. First, you're gonna get Louis. Then you get the diaries that Claudia left behind. Then, once we journey all the way to France and Paris, you'll get to see Armand's side, where he also talks about things that Lestat did as well. There's so many different things that the story does where you just don't know what to really believe. And the best thing to do is just sit back and watch it all unfold as Daniel himself tries to uncover this entire mess that he has in front of him. By the way, that drama that went down in San Francisco, that's some of the best right there. Yeah, season 1 and season 2 are all part of the first book of the Vampire Chronicles series. It's all the interview with the vampire. I don't know how they would have been able to adapt that first book in one season. That would have been impossible, especially because you wouldn't have been able to get that same level of charm that these characters deliver all throughout. You need to see that dynamic of Claudia, Louis, Lestat, all three of them together, at least for that entire first season, to really feel for these characters. That dynamic that's established and the way that it ends, it hit. It leaves you with a mess of emotions because sometimes you might side for one person, you might side for another. You're gonna feel for pretty much everyone in that situation. But yeah, you will have a clear villain at that time and point. And then season 2 comes around to splash some cold water on your face and says, well, yeah, it's like that, but it can also be a little bit like this. And even though I've spoiled quite a little bit of the story so far, it's not enough. I mean, I would still say, sit down, take your time, binge watch these 2 seasons front to back. You'll love it. And I'll be right here so you can tell me what you thought of it. This is a series that I feel like I can recommend to pretty much anyone, as long as they're not, maybe a little bit more into that hateful side of the internet. But I think that the series is spectacular in so many different ways. The visuals, I mean, they actually go to these places when they're actually filming. So a lot of season 2 takes place in France. So what happened? They shot a lot of France in this. And they shot a lot of footage in New Orleans for season 1. The music in this is so solid, and whenever Sam Reed opens his mouth to sing, you will be sad. No matter what version of Come To Me you're listening to, you're gonna be completely dumbfounded at how they made this song work. And by the way, holy shit, who's ready for season 3? We're gonna see rockstar Lestat just out and about strutting his stuff. That's probably gonna be just top 10 best seasons of all time right there. If not, that might elevate the series to be one of my #1 favorite shows of all time. But also, the OST in the series is just phenomenal. From the moment where you see things in season 1 where Louis says, I did not go to the wake, you hear that musical cue, and that musical cue stays with you forever. Or when he saves Claudia from that fire for the first time, I still remember that music beat for beat. And that's not even me getting to the point where we're talking about the themes of marginalized people and what they do in their small-knit communities, because it also talks a lot about certain kinds of people. There's so much to the show that it is not just a show about romance or vampires. There is so much built to it, so much care and attention that each one of the producers, creators, directors, whoever you want to name it, puts to this. The costume department, they're a big example of this. Look at this. Look at Lestat's entire wardrobe. A lot of the series takes place in the 1920s, so they take a lot of imagery, a lot of ideas from J.C. Leyendecker, a famous artist from this time. I mean, look at this robe over here. It is the same one from this scene, and we see it in 2 very different versions. Or when we're seeing the teaser for season 3 that's coming up, we see Lestat's outfit right over here. And everything screams Louis. Not just the song that we're hearing over here, Long Face, his entire wardrobe too. I got this from a post that I found on Twitter, where it basically breaks down what Lestat was wearing over here, where that dress that he actually has underneath is something from All Saints called the Louis Lou. And that green coat that he has is actually called the La Pointe. So this entire thing is just screaming out for Louis' attention. That is a job well done. I give so much props to everyone that was involved with the creative process of this. This was my favorite show that I watched in 2024, and I'm sad that I didn't find it a little bit earlier. And this will probably be my favorite series of 2025 as long as season 3 comes out this year. The drama that's going to transpire between Armand turning Daniel into a vampire and then following Lestat on tour. I want to see how that all goes down. But with this, I think that just briefly scratches the surface on my thoughts of Interview with the Vampire. This is the series that has made me start to go on my vampire phase now well into my 20s. But what did you guys think about this? Do you think this is one of the greatest TV shows currently airing right now? Or are you maybe a little bit disappointed that it isn't as faithful to the original Anne Rice version, you know? Please, let me know down in the comments below. I will love to know what you guys think about this series. I haven't had nearly enough people talking to me about it. So, thank you all for watching and getting this far. As always, I was Randy, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.